The church was suffocating, its stained-glass windows casting fractured rainbows over a sea of mourners dressed in black. Owen Caldwell's casket lay at the altar, draped in an American flag, a symbol of the hero everyone believed he was. But Elias Kane, trembling at the back of the pews, knew a truth that could shatter the room. Elias clutched the folded letter in his pocket, its edges worn from nights of rereading Owen's words of love, fear, and a secret too heavy for one man to carry. They met 3 years ago at a Brooklyn bookstore, where Owen's shy smile and quick wit had unraveled Elias's guarded heart. Their love had bloomed in stolen moments, late-night talks in their tiny apartment, walks through Central Park, and whispered promises under the stars. But Owen's death, a helicopter crash during a rescue mission in Afghanistan, had left Elias alone, grappling with grief and a truth he'd sworn to protect. The funeral was a spectacle of military honor. Owen's father, General Robert Caldwell, stood rigid in his decorated uniform, his jaw set as he accepted condolences. To him, Owen was the perfect son, a decorated Marine, a selfless hero who died saving his squad. The general's pride filled the air, but it was a pride built on lies. Elias's heart pounded as he watched the general's stern face, knowing the moment he stood to speak would change everything. Elias had never met Robert before today. Owen had kept his family at a distance, especially his father, whose expectations weighed like iron. "He'd never understand us," Owen had said one night, his voice breaking as he traced Elias's hand. "He thinks love is weakness unless it's for country." Elias had promised to stay silent, to let Owen control when or if they'd ever tell his family about their marriage. But now, with Owen gone, silence felt like betrayal. The priest's voice droned on, recounting Owen's bravery. Elias's gaze drifted to the casket, and he could almost see Owen's crooked smile, the one that made his heart race. He remembered their wedding, a quiet ceremony in a Vermont courthouse, just the two of them and a justice of the peace. Owen had worn a borrowed suit, his hands shaking as he slid the ring onto Elias's finger. "You're my home," he'd whispered. That memory burned now, a flame Elias couldn't extinguish. As the priest called for eulogies, Elias's legs moved before his mind could stop them. He stood, his throat tight, the letter a weight in his pocket. The room turned to him, a stranger in their eyes. Robert's gaze sharpened, his brow furrowing as Elias stepped to the podium. "My name is Elias Kane," he began, voice steady despite the storm inside. "I was Owen's husband." Gasps rippled through the church. Robert's face froze, his eyes narrowing as if Elias had struck him. Whispers spread like wildfire, but Elias pressed on, his voice rising. Owen wasn't just a hero to his country. He was my hero, my partner, my everything. And he died carrying a secret he shouldn't have had to hide. The letter trembled in Elias's hands as he unfolded it. Owen had written it before his last deployment, a confession meant only for Elias. "If I don't come back," it read, "tell them who I was. Tell them I loved you. Don't let them bury me as someone I'm not." Elias's voice cracked as he read aloud, each word a dagger to the illusion of Owen's life. He spoke of their love, their struggles, and Owen's fear of disappointing his father. He spoke of a man who was brave not just in battle, but in loving fiercely despite a world that might judge him. Robert stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Enough," he barked, his voice echoing. "You have no right to tarnish my son's memory with this lie." The room fell silent, the air thick with tension. Elias met Robert's glare, unflinching. "It's not a lie," he said softly. "It's who Owen was. And he deserved to be loved for it." The general stormed out, leaving a stunned congregation behind. Elias finished reading the letter, his voice breaking as he reached Owen's final words. "I'm not ashamed of us, Elias. I'm only ashamed I didn't tell the world sooner." As he stepped down, tears streamed down his face. But he felt lighter, as if he'd set Owen's truth free. Outside, the autumn air was crisp, biting at Elias's skin as he leaned against a tree. He didn't know if Robert would ever speak to him, but he'd kept his promise to Owen. The mourners began to file out, some avoiding his gaze, others offering quiet nods of respect. A young woman approached, her eyes red. "I was Owen's friend," she said. "He told me about you. He was so happy." Her words were a balm, but they couldn't erase the ache of Robert's rejection. That night, Elias sat in their apartment, surrounded by Owen's things, his dog tags, a worn copy of Whitman's poetry, a photo of them laughing at Coney Island. He wondered if he'd done the right thing, exposing Owen's truth to a room full of strangers. But as he traced the photo's edges, he felt Owen's presence, urging him to keep going. The fight wasn't over, not for Owen's memory, and not for the love they'd built. The days after the funeral were a blur of grief and whispers. Elias stayed in their Brooklyn apartment, the silence deafening without Owen's laughter to fill it. He avoided the news, where headlines speculated about the Marine's secret husband, twisting Owen's life into a scandal. But Elias couldn't hide from the world forever. A letter arrived, its envelope stamped with a Marine Corps insignia. Inside was an invitation to a memorial ceremony for Owen's unit, to be held at a military base in Virginia. Robert Caldwell's name was signed at the bottom. Elias's first instinct was to tear it up. Why would Robert invite him after storming out of the funeral? But the letter included a handwritten note. "We need to talk." For Owen, the words were curt, but they stirred something in Elias, hope, or maybe just curiosity. He booked a train ticket, his heart heavy with the weight of facing Owen's father again. The base was a sprawl of gray buildings under a slate sky. Elias arrived in a simple black coat, feeling out of place among the uniforms and salutes. The ceremony was formal, a tribute to Owen and his fallen squad. Robert stood at the front, his face unreadable as he pinned medals to a display. Elias lingered at the back, unnoticed until a young Marine approached. "You're Elias, right?" he asked. "Owen talked about you. Said you were his reason to come home." The words hit like a punch, and Elias could only nod, tears threatening to spill. After the ceremony, Robert found him. "Walk with me," he said, his voice gruff but lacking the venom from the funeral. They wandered to a quiet corner of the base, near a memorial wall etched with names. Robert's shoulders sagged, the weight of his rank seeming to crush him. "I didn't know," he said finally. "Owen never told me about you." "Why?" Elias took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "He wanted to, but he was afraid you'd see him as less of a man, less of a Marine. He loved you, but he couldn't bear to disappoint you." Robert's jaw tightened, and for a moment, Elias thought he'd walk away again. Instead, the general sat on a bench, staring at the ground. "I raised him to be strong," Robert said. "I thought strength meant duty. Sacrifice. I didn't know it could mean what you had." Elias sat beside him, the silence stretching between them. He pulled out a photo from his wallet, him and Owen at a pride event, their faces painted with rainbow flags, laughing. "This was him," Elias said, handing it to Robert. "Not just a soldier, but a man who loved fiercely, who lived honestly, even when it was hard." Robert stared at the photo, his fingers tracing Owen's smile. For the first time, Elias saw a crack in the general's armor, a flicker of regret. Their conversation was interrupted by a group of Marines passing by, their laughter jarring in the solemn air. Robert stood, composing himself. "I need time," he said, his voice low. "But I want to know who my son was. Will you tell me?" Elias nodded, a fragile truce forming between them. As Robert walked away, Elias felt a spark of hope. Maybe Owen's truth could bridge the gap between them. Back in Brooklyn, Elias began sorting through Owen's belongings, each item a memory. He found a journal Owen had kept during his deployments, filled with sketches and notes. One entry described their first date. "Elias's laugh is like sunlight. I want to be brave enough to tell the world about him." Tears fell as Elias read, but he also felt a resolve growing. He would honor Owen by living openly, by sharing their story. Elias started volunteering at a local LGBTQ youth center, where he met others who'd lost partners, who understood the ache of love cut short. He spoke about Owen, his courage, his kindness, and slowly, the pain began to transform into purpose. But Robert's invitation lingered in his mind. Could a man so rooted in tradition truly accept the son he'd misunderstood? Elias wasn't sure, but he owed it to Owen a try. Weeks passed, and Elias received a call from Robert. "I'm in New York," the general said, his voice clipped but softer than before. "Can we meet?" Elias suggested a diner in Brooklyn, a place he and Owen used to visit. When Robert arrived, he looked out of place in his crisp blazer among the diner's worn booths. Elias slid into the seat across from him, a coffee mug warming his hands. "I read Owen's journal," Robert began, pulling out the worn notebook Elias had mailed him. "He wrote about you a lot, about how you made him feel free." The word hung between them, heavy with meaning. Elias nodded, his throat tight. "He was free with me," he said, "but he always felt caged by what you expected of him." Robert's face twitched, a mix of pain and defiance. "I wanted him to be strong, to be a leader. I thought I was doing right by him." Elias leaned forward, his voice steady. "You raised a man who was strong enough to love me, even when he knew it might cost him your approval." That's the kind of leader he was. The conversation stretched late into the night, Robert asking questions about Owen's life, his favorite books, his dreams, the moments he'd hidden from his family. Elias shared stories of their travels, their fights, their quiet nights cooking together. With each story, Robert's walls seemed to crumble, replaced by a father's longing to know the son he'd lost. But the past wasn't easily undone. Robert admitted he'd struggled with Owen's sexuality, his beliefs clashing with the reality of his son's life. "I was raised to think it was wrong," he said, his voice raw. "But I look at you, and I see how much you loved him. I'm trying to understand." Elias felt a pang of empathy. Change was hard, especially for a man like Robert, whose world was built on absolutes. As they parted, Robert handed Elias a small box. Inside was Owen's dog tags, polished and gleaming. "He want you to have these," Robert said. Elias clutched them, tears welling. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet, but it was a start. Back at the youth center, Elias found purpose in helping others. He met a teenager named Sam, who reminded him of Owen, brave but afraid of being seen. Elias shared Owen's story, hoping it would give Sam courage. One day, Sam showed him a letter he'd written to his own parents. "Coming out. You think they'll hate me?" Sam asked. Elias squeezed his shoulder. "They might not understand at first, but love has a way of breaking through." Elias's thoughts often returned to Robert. He wondered if the general would keep reaching out, or if this was as far as they'd go. Then, one evening, an email arrived. Robert had attached a photo of Owen as a boy, saluting in a too-big uniform. "He was always brave," Robert wrote. "I'm starting to see how much." Elias smiled, hope flickering again. He replied, inviting Robert to visit their apartment, to see the life Owen had built. The response came quickly. "I'd like that." The apartment felt different with Robert inside it. Elias watched as the general took in the space, Owen's books on the shelf, the photos on the walls, the blanket they'd curled up under during movie nights. Robert's eyes lingered on a framed picture from their wedding, Owen's grin wide and unguarded. "He looks happy," Robert said, almost to himself. Elias nodded. He was. They sat on the couch, a tentative peace settling between them. Robert asked about Owen's last deployment, the one that took him away. Elias hesitated, then shared the truth. Owen had been struggling, not with the mission, but with the weight of hiding who he was. "He wanted to tell you," Elias said. He was working up to it. Robert's hands clenched, his voice low. "I wish he had. I wish I'd given him the chance." The conversation turned to Robert's own life, his marriage, his career, the pressure to mold Owen into a certain kind of man. "I thought I was protecting him," Robert admitted. "But I push him away." Elias listened, seeing the man behind the uniform, a father grappling with regret. He didn't absolve Robert, but he offered understanding. "Owen loved you, even when it hurt. He never stopped wanting your approval." As Robert left, he paused at the door. "Can I come back?" he asked. Elias nodded, a lump in his throat. "Any time." After the door closed, Elias sank onto the couch, clutching Owen's dog tags. He felt the weight of their love, but also the possibility of healing, not just for himself, but for Robert too. Elias threw himself into his work at the youth center, organizing a memorial event for Owen. He invited veterans, LGBTQ advocates, and community members, hoping to honor Owen's life fully, soldier and husband. Sam helped with the planning, his confidence growing as he saw Elias live openly. The event was held in a community garden, fairy lights strung above as people shared stories of love and loss. Elias spoke last, his voice steady as he described Owen's courage, not just in war, but in loving against the odds. To his surprise, Robert showed up, standing quietly at the back. When Elias finished, Robert approached, his eyes wet. "I'm proud of him," he said, the words heavy with meaning. "And I'm sorry I didn't know him better." Elias felt a rush of gratitude. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. That night, Elias dreamed of Owen, his laughter echoing through Central Park. When he woke, the ache was still there, but so was a sense of purpose. He was carrying Owen's legacy forward, one story, one connection at a time. And with Robert's tentative steps toward acceptance, Elias began to believe that love could mend even the deepest wounds. Months passed, and Elias and Robert's relationship grew, fragile but steady. They met regularly, sometimes at the diner, sometimes at the apartment. Robert brought photos, letters, even Owen's old baseball glove, piecing together a picture of a son he'd misunderstood. Elias shared more of their life, videos of Owen dancing badly, voice memos of him singing off-key. Each memory was a bridge, narrowing the gap between father and son. But not everyone was ready to accept Owen's truth. News of Elias's speech at the funeral had spread, and some of Owen's fellow Marines sent hateful messages, calling Elias a liar who tarnished a hero's legacy. The words stung, but Elias refused to hide. He posted about Owen on social media, sharing their love story with pride. Most responses were supportive, but the vitriol reminded him how far the world still had to go. At the youth center, Elias became a mentor to more kids like Sam, who was now openly out to his family. Sam's parents attended a center event, their awkward hugs a sign of progress. Elias saw Owen in these moments, his belief that love could change hearts. But the pain of Owen's absence never faded. Some nights, Elias sat alone, rereading Owen's journal, wondering if he was doing enough to honor him. Robert, too, was changing. He attended a pride event with Elias, standing stiffly among the rainbow flags, but listening as Elias spoke about Owen. Later, he admitted, "I didn't understand this world before. I'm still learning." Elias saw the effort, the willingness to try, and it gave him hope. They began planning a scholarship in Owen's name for LGBTQ youth pursuing military service or advocacy. It was a way to merge Owen's worlds, to honor both his courage and his love. One evening, Robert invited Elias to his home in Virginia. The house was filled with military memorabilia, but also photos of Owen as a child, smiling and carefree. Over dinner, Robert shared a story of Owen sneaking out to help a friend, risking punishment to do what was right. "He was always brave," Robert said. "I just didn't see all the ways." Elias smiled, feeling Owen's presence in the room. As they worked on the scholarship, Elias and Robert faced pushback from some of Robert's colleagues, who saw it as politicizing Owen's memory. But Robert stood firm, his voice steady. "My son was a hero," he said. And his love for Elias was part of that. Elias felt a surge of pride, not just for Owen, but for the father beginning to understand him. The scholarship launch was held in Central Park, under the same trees where Owen and Elias had shared countless moments. Hundreds gathered, veterans, activists, families, and youth from the center. Elias stood at a podium, Owen's dog tags around his neck, and spoke of a man who'd lived bravely in every way. "Owen taught me that love is the greatest act of courage," he said, his voice carrying over the crowd. This scholarship is his legacy, a reminder that everyone deserves to be seen and loved for who they are. Robert took the stage next, his uniform replaced by a simple suit. His speech was short but powerful. "I lost my son twice," he said. "Once to war, and once to my own blindness. I'm here to honor the man he was, a soldier, a son, a husband. The crowd applauded, and Elias felt tears prick his eyes. Robert's words were a testament to Owen's impact, a father's journey from rejection to acceptance. The event ended with a moment of silence, the crowd holding candles that flickered like stars. Elias felt Owen's absence keenly, but also his presence in the faces of youth, in Robert's changed heart, in a love that still burned within him. As the crowd dispersed, Sam approached, now a confident young man. Owen would be proud, he said. Elias hugged him, knowing it was true. In the months that followed, the scholarship grew, funding dreams for young people who, like Owen, dared to live authentically. Elias and Robert continued their work, their bond a quiet tribute to Owen's memory. They faced challenges, prejudice, doubt, their own grief, but they faced them together, united by a love that refused to be silenced. One spring day, Elias visited Owen's grave. The headstone now updated to include beloved husband. He placed a rainbow flag beside it, whispering, "We did it, love. They know you now." The wind carried his words, and for the first time, Elias felt peace. Owen's truth had set them all free, proving that love, in all its forms, was the truest heroism of all.